Hit it.
My name's Sam Maggs, and this time, I'm actually recording the podcast.
I'm Ian McAllister, and I've got an odd feeling of deja vu.
I'm Jamie Adams, and I'm not going to continue this joke any further. And this is Brainwaves,
Again.
bringing you the best in board game and tabletop gaming news. These are the headlines for the week beginning the 10th of December 2018. Is that a cool mini? It would seem not. Board and Dice have announced a merger with NSKN. And get 'em while they're hot! Big Potato have made a vending machine. All this and more coming up on Brainwaves.
Our first headline this week sees Cool Mini or Not's stock price continue to fall as the company have reported losses of $4.1 million for the 9-month period that ended in September 2018. The company are blaming losses on Kickstarter revenues and just their Kickstarter endeavors this year not being as successful as they have been previously. Ian, I think this echoes some of your ideas that maybe this Kickstarter bubble and the miniature bubble is coming to an end.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure that the Kickstarter bubble is coming to an end, but I do think there is some apathy and sort of fatigue with big miniature Kickstarters now. There's so many out there. There's a lot of board games out there that just seem to go on Kickstarter, have lots of miniatures in their game, even if they don't really need them. Maybe standees would do, maybe counters would do, but they just have miniatures in there because that's the thing that they think attracts a lot of money. And in Cmon's case, that has attracted a lot of money in the past, but now it doesn't seem to be doing them quite as well. And I do think there is I think there is a sort of general fatigue within the board game community of these massive numbers of miniature Kickstarters where maybe the game isn't actually all that great.
Yeah, the latest game is obviously the latest big flagship game is obviously Cthulhu Death May Die, which backers won't see until I think it's 2020.
Well,
right?
some of the pledges are next year, but basically what happened with Death May Die was because the huge miniature is so difficult to make, as you pledged later and later within the campaign, the actual date you will get that game has drifted further and further onwards. So some people are not going to get that game till 2020. By the time you get that game, is your enthusiasm still going to be there for that game? Reviews will have come in from people who have already got it. That might have dampened your spirits down a bit, and the secondary market for that game may have completely collapsed if you are planning to sell it on. Who knows?
Well, I think, as you said, Ian, the fatigue that may be coming, or maybe not fatigue, more apathy, is that there's, as you said, so many miniatures-heavy games that are coming out for Kickstarter again and again, and it might simply be people are voting with their wallets, and they go, I want this game. It's got nice minis, but I don't want it. I want this game because it's got a company that I trust. It's got a designer that I trust, and for example, with Cthulhu Death May Die, it still made a lot of money. And part of that may be due to the Lovecraft mythos theme. Also may be down to the fact it's Cool Mini or not the company. It may be down to Eric Lang and Rob Davio, the big names that they've got designing it. So this idea of safe pair of hands.
And talking about big news, we have another merger in the world of board games. Yes, Board and Dice and NSKN have merged. These are two companies, two European companies that have come together to merge. We played 5 Minute Chase earlier in the year. We liked it so much that we did a skit on it. We really liked that game, and I really want to play a few more of their Board and Dice's games. Their escape room game I've got a promo pack of to give a go of. But yeah, they've hooked up with NSKN. There's been no announcements of any cancellations, so it seems like a really positive move for two smaller companies. They're going to get a larger presence, share costs across both companies. A statement from their Facebook page reads, "We are thrilled to finally announce this to everyone. We have both worked together on many fields. We are friends outside working hours. What's probably most important, both companies have excellent and successful games in their portfolios. We want to move to the next level in the board games industry, and we know we can do this together by joining our potentials under one refreshed Board and Dice brand." So there's a new brand logo for Board and Dice. They're both going to be operating under the Board and Dice logo. They've already announced that they are going to be releasing new games in 2019, including Dust in the Wings, Sierra West, a second follow-up to their Escape Tales game, which is just out. What's the expansion, Jamie?
Teotihuacan.
Thank you, Jamie, because I can't pronounce that for the love of me. There's a Dice Letters expansion coming in, a new big box in the Exodus universe. So it seems like a really positive move for two smaller companies. And as we've said before on this cast, it's nothing to fear of companies merging together. That's just business and the way it works.
Big Potato Games, publishers of such titles as Scroll, The Chameleon, and Clickbait, have announced they have installed a vending machine for their board games in Loading Bar in Dalston. Now, Loading Bar is a board game and table and gaming bar. It has several locations throughout, I believe, London and somewhere else. Throughout London and the south of England. Big Potato Games itself is based in Shoreditch, and they've announced that they want to, getting this joint venture together is a great idea. It's bringing the video game crowd, the board game crowd together. And that's not all. If you are a bar or a club or location that would like to stock and vend Big Potato's games, you can get in touch with Big Potato to get one installed.
That sounds like a fantastic idea.
Yes, it's wonderful.
I think it's cool. It's very on brand for them.
Yes, you can say a lot of things about Big Potato Games. They are always really with it in getting their games out there and to the populace. For example, at UK Games Expo, and I think at most of the expos they're going to, they have their big car, their van that they drive around in with games just stuffed in the back.
Yeah, I think they take that to sort of corporate events and that kind of thing as well, sort of trying to sell their games as team building efforts and that kind of thing, and that's really cool. It's lovely to see a company sort of reaching out to people who don't necessarily think of board games as something they can use within their businesses and getting them out in front of people. Fantastic. So here at Brainwaves, we are always supportive of the smaller companies, and recently there has been an effort by a group of people to really put out a lot of print and play games. So these are games that you can download, print on your local printer, or send to a shop for printing, and you now can get a lot of those games from PMP Arcade. This is a site much like Drive-Thru RPG or Drive-Thru Cards, where a lot of smaller publishers are putting out their stuff, and the creators get to keep about 70% of the proceeds. That split up into different categories, so you can find solo games, you can find group games for two, you can find games for groups. You can get games from as little as $1, which is really cool. And yeah, you can search a lot of different companies, and there's some of the larger sort of small press companies that are on there already, including Button Shy Games. They produce a lot of these sort of small wallet games, which are sort of 18 cards only. Really cool design, and it's something that I've always been investigating myself in my own design. So it's really cool to see a sort of aggregate site for a lot of these companies come together, much like sort of Steam and that kind of thing for PC gaming. Should be some really cool stuff on there, so go check it out.
Well, going from new games to a very, very old game indeed. A game from what is assumed to be 5,000 years ago. A board game found during archaeological excavations in the ancient Sumerian city of Ur, known now as Tal al-Mukayyar. My apologies if I got that wrong, in southern Iraq. Our board game was found and has been christened the Royal Game of Ur. 2 players with 7 circular pieces each must move in a loop across a wooden board in an elongated H shape. In a very similar game to modern mechanics, if your piece lands on an opponent's piece, that opponent's piece is knocked back to the beginning, and you need to start again. The board game itself came to light again in 1922, where it was taken to the British Museum for study. However, it took more than 50 years for rules to be matched and translated from a corresponding clay tablet. I think it's fantastic to see the progenitor of, board games kind of coming back into light and being almost re-released and kind of brought into the light of our modern board game renaissance. We can see where possibly some mechanics originated. Just get a little bit more into the culture of those who came very, very far before us. And we've talked on the podcast before about games from, the early, I think it's 10th, 11th century or the 7th or 8th century. And now we've got
we take up a lot of games in the garden.
Yeah, exactly. And now we've got one that's 5,000 years old. That's amazing. Well, moving on to a slightly more serious story. We know we like to juggle the silly and fun with the serious at Brainwaves. There has been a lawsuit brought by the City of Warren Police and Fire Retirement Systems and other pension funds as well, They're based in Michigan, but the claim has been sued in a federal court in Rhode Island against Hasbro in late September. The lawsuit alleges that Hasbro misled investors about its financial health. The allegations include Hasbro officials downplayed the extent to which the company relied on sales from the financially unstable Toys R Us, and it misled investors and analysts about the sales conditions in Britain and the United Kingdom, and they were actually slightly risky. Also, that executives may have inflated the price of the stock in order to sell it off, whilst at the same time encouraging others to invest in the company. A claim is that 1.4 million shares have been sold, totaling about $147 million. Now, we'd like to state, for the record, that Hasbro vehemently denies these claims and will vigorously defend them. This is not an opinion piece, this is merely a statement, as it were. And it's just something that we're going to keep our eyes on. Now, I'd like to turn over to our new license correspondent, Ian.
Oh yeah, sure, yes. I've just been promoted to licensee correspondent for Brainwaves. IDW has announced that they are going to be producing a Metal Gear Solid game designed by Emerson Matsuki. Have I got that right, Jamie?
Matsuki or Matsuchi, I'm not too sure.
He is the designer of Reef, the Century Spice Road Eastern Wonders games, and Spectre Ops, which is probably the most relevant one for Metal Gear Solid there, sort of XCOM style board game. And we don't really know much about it at the moment, other than it's just been announced. That's going to be coming out 2019, so most likely we'll see a sort of Gen Con or Essen. Announced just this last week at PAX Unplugged, we have Clank Legacy, yet another Legacy game coming out. But not only that, it is going to be Clank Legacy Acquisitions Incorporated. This is the Penny Arcade D&D podcast, or at least one of them. They have 2 or 3 of them at least. The folks who make Clank are going to be working with Penny Arcade to release a version of Clank in the Penny Arcade Acquisitions Incorporated universe. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm not a big fan of Clank, personally. I don't like the player elimination stuff, but it's proved massively successful. It's got loads of expansions, and this will hopefully help make board games reach a wider audience. So I can't really complain.
Jamie,
Sam.
I've really been enjoying Brainwaves lately.
I have too.
But really, what I want to know is just, what have you been playing lately? What's Ian been playing lately? You know, I don't even know what I've been playing lately. And I just want to know more about kind of the games you play and what you think about them.
Well, funny you should mention that, Sam, because as well as the wonderful, wonderful Brainwaves podcast that we have here, in which everyone is listening to, hello out there, we also have a sister podcast called Idle Thoughts, where the 3 of us talk about games we've been playing and discuss them a little bit more. It's a little bit of a looser format.
That's exactly what I want. How do I get that?
Well, Sam, I can tell you how you can get that. For only $1 a month, you can get an extended version of the Brainwave podcast by joining our Patreon. Yes, that's right, you can get more of me, Sam, and Jamie talking nonsense on the regular cast. But if you want even more nonsense, for only $2 a month, you can get access to the Idle Thoughts podcast. Yes, me, Sam, and Jamie, just talking about the games we played in the previous month. We'll be talking about new games, old games, RPGs, anything we've played in the last month or so, maybe even the occasional computer game. Who knows? Tune into our Idle Thoughts podcast for only $2 a month. We really appreciate any help you can give us. We are only $2 away from our first target, which will basically help make the podcast and the website sustainable. And then the sky is the limit after that. You can check out our Patreon for our next goal levels and how you can get involved. Thank you very much.
Sam, does that answer your question?
So, with Christmas just round the corner, this question comes to us from Simon Marr on Twitter, and he was asking what we think the best games to play with your family are over Christmas. What do we think, guys?
Tailor it to your family. If you've got a family that is happy to sit down and
I don't have a family of tailors. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Fine enough, I do have a family of tailors, quite literally.
Wow.
Yeah, my mum's surname is Taylor. Anyway,
Oh, it was a pun on a thing.
Oh, and I turned it into a real thing. If you have a family that's happy to sit there and play Twilight Imperium 4, play and learn Twilight Imperium 4, that's absolutely fine. You can go ahead, and I hope you have a phenomenal
What a
time.
Christmas.
That would be an amazing Christmas. However, if, like my family...
You say
have people-
amazing.
Yeah, it'd be intense. If you
It'll
have
be a long
like,
Christmas.
if, like me, you have a family that maybe Twilight Imperium isn't their thing, maybe, play board games, but not of that level. Find a game that works with everyone. I've had success in the past of teaching Ticket to Ride to my family, teaching Skull, and find the level that's right for you. Maybe it is something that's slightly more considered a gateway game.
Yeah, those are. Sorry. Continue.
No, I was gonna a gateway game, which is kind of is somewhat nebulous, but people think kind of a game that is generally easy enough to teach to people and will possibly get them into the world of board gaming beyond the Hasbro
it needs to be light.
clutch.
It needs to be light. It needs to me. It needs to have like a strong theme that you can sort of sell to the group a little bit, and it needs to have a sort of short setup and play time. Ones that I go to for introducing people to the hobby, things like Lords of Vegas, which has got that sort of slight Monopoly thing of like backstabby, money grabbing kind of thing to it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make.
But a much better game.
I think
Monopoly
a good point
is.
to make is that Monopoly is obviously like the classic Christmas game, and if you want to just kind of introduce people to the wider board gaming hobby, but through something that they are kind of familiar with, of just like grabbing cash and just kind of stealing people's money and things like that. Las Vegas is a good shout.
Yeah, look, and you can find a lot of the games that we're going to be suggesting aren't going to be the new hotness. They are going to be the sort of classic gateway games that have been hanging around for a good few years. You can easily get your hands on them. They're not rare or hard to get your hands on. So I'd also recommend Takanoko as well. It's a beautiful little game of managing a garden and pandas wandering around it trying to eat your bamboo, but you want to grow bamboo, and there's a lot of little gotcha things in there, and it just looks beautiful on the table. I'm quite a big fan of Azul from that I picked up this year as well. That's probably the newest game I'd recommend as well. It does have that slight thing of like there's a puzzle in front of you to solve, so there's not a lot of chit chat across the table. So that'll work for some groups more than it will for others.
I mean, my uncle, my uncle and my aunt actually are both very big fans of hill walking, and my uncle definitely has been a mountain climber. So this year, I might take down for Christmas K2 by Rebel Games.
Cheery.
I know, but it suits his. It might suit his theme. It might engage him a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah.
Might have a lot.
Yeah,
of
you can tailor themes.
Yeah.
So I've tried. I've always tried getting my mum and dad into games, and my dad's a little bit more enthusiastic about getting into games than my mum is, but I have got them into a couple of things so Ragnar Brothers Blooming Gardens, because my mum's very into gardening. She really likes that game. I bought them for I bought it for them a couple of years ago, and they really like that game. So yeah, it's just a matter of sort of trying to hook into whatever those people are enthusiastic about, what the people around your table are.
Also, I think something about introducing people to board games, they can sometimes be put off by kind of the vastness of it. I know that a lot of the time just board gaming and tabletop gaming as a hobby generally kind of sometimes gets a bad rep in being kind of like a boring, dull hobby that we are obviously trying to dispel. But I'd say a go-to company for that kind of thing and get people involved at Christmas, mentioned before on today's show, is Big Potato Games.
Yes.
Scroll. Lots of really fun, family-friendly games that are just kind of that have a good appeal to them in their visual style as well as their play style. They just look engaging. And actually, Big Potato Games, if you go and look around some of the bigger department stores, say like Debenhams, John Lewis, Marks and Spencers and stuff.
I think Warston's carry a lot of their stuff as well.
Yes, they
Big
do.
Potato Games are in there, where a lot of kind of the bigger tabletop gaming brands aren't in those shops, because I think Big Potatoes Games have that kind of Christmas appeal and that sellability, that bringing people together for a silly game, really.
Yeah, I mean,
I would say family friendly, most of them. However, I would take probably a word of caution about Scroll.
There's a few cards in there that you could easily just take
meets,
out.
Chinese Whispers. It's got quite a lot of risque phrases on it, but that could easily be solved by just writing down a bunch of things that you've all decided and worked on. It's
and just
easy enough
removing
to
those cards from the pool.
to hack it, as it were.
Yeah,
But I'd
also
really
like to-
recommend Scroll by them. Bucket of Doom's good for getting people talking about crazy situations. A little bit of an abstract game that's kind of good for a very quick kind of 10-minute game is OK Play. Easily teach it to absolutely anyone. It's essentially a flat on the table 4-player version of Connect 4.
They have just announced a new version of that under a different name. I can't quite remember what the name is off the top of my head, but if you go to Big Potato's site, the information is on there. Basically, same game, they've just rebranded it a little bit and improved the quality of the components a bit.
The same with Obama Llama, which has been changed to, I believe, Zeus on a Goose or Zeus on a Moose.
And I've just seen, because I am on their site, that they've released a Christmas edition called Santa
Banter, yeah.
Nice.
Which
Very
is,
nice
is somehow involved for the Radio 1 DJ, but I haven't quite followed that story properly.
And you could also go to possibly my favourite game for under £10, and that is Rhino Hero by Haba. Or it's slightly more, not that much more expensive, but Grown Up Big Brother, Rhino Hero Super Battle, also by Haba. 2 fantastic games, both of which are under £20.
Yeah, they're firm favourites of the podcast. I'd also put in a shout in, if you want something a little darker, a little bit more gothic, I'd really recommend Escape the Dark Castle. That's a really good little box full of sort of like gothic, horror-y kind of stuff. If your family is into that kind of thing, if you loved the sort of choose your own adventure books if you love to choose your own adventure books as a youth and you want to introduce the new kids in your family to that kind of thing, Escape the Dark Castle is absolutely fantastic.
I've got 2 recommendations for some kind of very family-friendly games. The first is Dixit. Easily play it with anyone. It's got a really nice, friendly art style. It's a game where you essentially all have a hand of very abstract art cards, and you're just trying to link words between them and guess who was the original kind of person who said what word and things like that. Really good. A very similar game to that, if you want to kind of just put it up a level to a bit more board gamers game and a bit more competitive, would be Mysterium. It takes that and kind of adds a Cluedo element. So by using abstract art cards and trying to get across kind of concepts through art without much talking, but also a lot of kind of arguments around the table and things is always good fun. Mysterium is quite a cool thing to check out.
We were talking about a lot of cheap games there. If you want something that's kind of Skull-like but has got a little bit more bite to it, I'd recommend Kakalaka Poker or Cockroach Poker as well. That's a really good sort of little bluffing game that is under a tenner easily and really good fun.
Oh, I'd love to mention Double.
I was about to say Double from Asmodee, because it should be under a tenner and it's not, but it is a wonderful game. It's like a more advanced Snap, and I have seen adults stare at this game in horror and anger going, I can't see anything, where young children have just been clearing the table.
As Jamie said, it's kind of an advanced Snap. It's got a deck of circular cards, each with many, many images on it. You're trying to match things, and there's about 5 different games in the box, and it's
Double's fantastic.
£12. It's brilliant. And there's always a Star Wars version out there as well, if that's
and
your
there's
kind of thing.
I think there's a Double Junior as well.
There is.
There's a younger kids version as well.
There's multiple different versions of Double, so you can find one to suit any taste.
To our American listeners, that game is called Spot It in the States.
Yes. I would also like to throw in a little bit into the hat and go Machikoro from IDW.
Yeah.
Again, it's a bit more of a gamer's game, but yeah, it's really good.
I would say it's not. I think it's a nice kind of middle ground.
Yeah.
In as much as it takes a little bit of Monopoly in that you're buying property, but it changes it. Instead of it being on a board, you're buying property which are on cards, and it's
got a bit of a gotcha element with some of the properties
bit.
you
So
buy,
it
steal
kind of
other
fulfills
people's
that
money and things.
Yeah, it scratches that little Monopoly itch of, I get to take these things away from you, and you're building up your own towns against each other. And I think it's generally, I have in my shelf the Bright Lights Big City version, which I believe is all the expansions and the base game in a slightly different way. I think that's a very nice version, and I think it's easy enough to teach to people. Yeah,
and it's a very, very simple card game with very inviting artwork, very bright artwork. It's really, really nice. Check out Machikoro, people.
There's loads of recommendations from us there. I'd also recommend checking out the recent Shop and Sit Down video, which was a bunch of Christmas recommendations. And most of your sort of favorite bloggers and reviewers will be putting out similar lists this kind of year. If you look back on the Giant Brain blog, there's a couple of my own recommendation lists from the last couple of years. And yeah, what we're basically saying is like, make sure you tailor those games to your audience. If they're interested in gardens and that kind of thing, get them games about gardens. If they're interested in gigantic monsters, get King of Tokyo. You know, that kind of thing. Make sure you're playing to your audience, and you're much more likely to get them involved in gaming and enjoying games around the table. So the Brainwaves team have been on vacation, sort of. Well, I've been down to the far south, been down to Dragonmeet in London. This was a great time. It's good to catch up with a few friends. Dragonmeet is an annual convention, usually happens in the first weekend of December. Used to be a very RPG-focused con, now has a much broader church, board games, card games, RPGs, all sorts of things. But Jamie, our West Coast correspondent, has been out and about doing things in Glasgow. What's been happening in Glasgow, Jamie?
Yes, I am the West Coast correspondent. Ian and Sam are both out there in the wild, windy East Coast, and I'm stuck in the balmy.
It is wild and windy tonight, it has to be said.
And to be fair, it's quite wild and windy on the West Coast as well. Probably slightly wetter, but oh well. Yes, last week I went to the Lucky Sparrow Games Cafe, which has just opened on Pollokshaws Road on the south side of Glasgow. I was invited there for their press night. That also down there was Ben and Charlotte from the Unlucky Frog, Ian from Unpopular Mechanics, as Ian said, the fine folk from the Penance RPG, and Owen Duffy, who is a writer for The Guardian. And we were all kind of chatting and had a wee game of Scroll from Big Potato Games, which we've just talked about. Had a fantastic time there. The staff at the Lucky Sparrow are all really fantastic. They're really nice to me, and by all accounts, they've been doing very, very well indeed. A lot of bookings for tables, which is exactly what you want to see. And if you want to go, you either book or get in there in good time.
They're going to be expanding in the new year as well. They're going to be developing the basement of that cafe as well, so they're going to have more space. And they've been talking to ourselves and then Lucky Frog about maybe hosting some podcast stuff there as well. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to coming through, playing some games there, and getting a chance to chat to the folks for longer.
Yes. I wish them all the very, very best. And I'll be down.
As do I.
Again, very, very soon.
There have been many fantastic games out this year, but of course there can only be one winner of the Game Innovator of the Year award from the Toy Association, and that has to be, of course, Don't Step in It. What do you think you do in Don't Step in It, guys?
I don't... Do you step in it?
No,
You
Sam,
don't step in it,
you
Sam.
don't step in it.
Oh.
That's the point of the game. I don't know. I think you've got to... It's an interesting, quippy word game where you've got to say...
I'm going to stop you right there,
obviously-
Jamie. It is none of those things. It is a plastic mat where you put fake poo on the mat, put on a blindfold, and try to not step in it. As its tagline says, who can avoid the numbers two... Sorry. As the tagline says, who can avoid the number twos to be number one to win? Now, this is a Toy Association Awards. We have to remember that. However, this has been awarded to a game that is coming from Hasbro, who have many other games that could definitely qualify for this, and we might actually recognise as, you know, a game.
But the thing is, Ian...
So, what on
innovative.
earth is this doing?
Ian, this is not... Okay, not our place to dissemble and criticise the choice of the judges. It is worth noting, however...
It is.
That,
It's totally our place.
No, I know it is. It's worth noting that...
That's literally our
Fireball
job
Island-
as journalists.
It's worth noting that Fireball Island Curse of Volcar was also included among the nominations, and that didn't win. And I think a very good reason why it didn't win is because it's not innovative. It's a game. It's a reissue of a game.
Well, yeah, but at least it's recognizable as a board. At least it's recognizable as a board game. You know.
So it's... Do you know what? If it would be good if we could get a statement from the judges, like, basically describing their choice, and I'd be very happy to listen to it and see it, and then go, okay, that's fair enough, and then try and see what the other ones were like. You know what? It won. Fair play to it.
Anyway, moving on from that to something a little more pleasant, we'd like to give a shout out to Simon Marr, our most recent patron, and I've got the name of the patron right this time, so that's all good. And also a shout out to our first executive producers, the Lucky Sparrow Gaming Cafe. Thank you very much, guys, for your patronage, and we will be through soon to do some gaming stuff for yourselves. We'd also like to give a wee shout out to Richard from We're Not Wizards. He currently has a Kickstarter going to fund some new equipment for himself to get to some cons next year. Richard puts out a lot of really good interviews with a wide range of board gaming people. I was on it myself earlier in the year, and yeah, it's a really good podcast. Give it a listen, and give him $1 or $2 if you can.
A little bit of a change in our Christmas schedule coming up. The next cast that will go out on the 23rd of September is our Christmas special. That is our special awards show. Slightly longer than the usual cast, covering very different content. We really hope you enjoy that. Give us some feedback to that as well. We really want to learn from that cast. And then our first January cast, we're actually going to skip the usual cast just while all of the Christmas and New Year celebrations calm down. And we will be putting out our sister podcast, our first episode from back in October, Idle Thoughts, where we just talked about the games we were playing that month. If you enjoy it, you can always subscribe to our Patreon and get that every month in your mailbox.
Yeah, we just, all of us at Bravos would just really like to thank all our listeners for the support of this year. The response to the podcast has been massive, much better than we could have expected. We're really, really pleased with the response to the cast. Thanks very much to all our patrons who have given us $1 or $2 to help us really maintain the cast and move forward with different projects that we want to do. We've just been blown away by the support. It's fantastic to see, and Merry Christmas to you all. Thank you very much.
And to be honest, even if you haven't contributed to the Patreon and you've been listening to it and still enjoy it, thank you very much for listening to it.
Every listener is fantastic. Thank you very much.
Everyone who's liked us on Facebook, liked us on Twitter, anyone who's given us a review on iTunes, that greatly helps get the cast out there more. Anyone who's submitted a question for Brainstorms, anyone who's come up to us at a con and said you enjoy what we're doing, thanks. It's really weird to meet someone who knows my voice.
Yes.
It
is odd to meet someone and go, I've heard your voice. I don't know your face. I like what I hear, though. And go, okay.
I don't like your face, though.
Go.
Hate your face.
No, hate your face.
But yeah, thanks so much, and we will definitely be back in the new year.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, and if you'd like to get in touch with us, you can follow us on Twitter at The Giant Brain, Instagram, Giant Brain UK. You can find us on Facebook, just search The Giant Brain. Our website is giantbrain.co.uk. And of course, you can get in touch with us through email at giantbrainuk@gmail.com. And please do drop us a line. Let us know what you'd like to see in the cast over the next year, over 2019. Drop us an email and ask us questions. We will happily answer those. If we get enough emails in some sort of mailbag, we'll maybe even put a new little section in the show to answer such things. I'm sure Sam will come up with an appropriate jingle. Again, thank you very much for all your support in 2019. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Merry Christmas. Did you just say thank you for your support in 2019?
Don't think so.
Okay.